In today's episode, we're talking about grief, trauma, and the loss of a parent to suicide. This is a deeply personal and emotional conversation, and some parts may be difficult to hear. Please listen with care. Welcome to a new episode of A Catholic Journey. Today, I have my friend Monica Brown on the show, and we're just going to have a conversation about grief and what that looks like when you experience it from a young age. So, Monica, can you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your story?
Sure. Yeah, Jessica, I'm so excited to have this opportunity to talk about grief. My name's Monica Brown. I'm originally from outside of Philadelphia in Chester County, Pennsylvania. I'm one of 6 kids, and I grew up in a strong Catholic community. So, from a young age, faith is a really important part of my community and my upbringing. When I was 11, my dad passed away. He had been dealing with mental health and a traumatic brain injury I didn't realize till after he passed that he'd been dealing with his mental health his entire life. And I now, as an adult, I realized the traumatic brain injuries from severe truck accidents as a truck driver really impacted his, just accelerating his poor mental health, and he actually took his own life. So that happened when I was 11, and it's been a huge part of my life.
Do you remember what that felt like for you as such a young child? Because the age that you were when you lost your dad is actually 1 year younger than my son is right now. What did that feel like being 11? I feel like it's such a formative age. You know, you're almost a teenager, You're not a little baby anymore. So you're able to grasp the concept of death so much clearer than, say, like a 6-year-old or a 5-year-old
sure.
would. Do you remember, or can you go back? Do you recall, what did that feel like for you? What were you thinking? What was going through your mind when that happened?
I know that it was unexpected. I feel like grief is different if they have an illness that you anticipate it getting worse or you anticipate an end. But it was so sudden. There was no, I was a kid, my mom and dad weren't talking to us about how bad his mental health was. I don't even know if my mom knew at the time what to do because she had a baby. She had a fresh little one that she was caring for. And like I said, that was the 6th child, and he passed. He took his life the week before my youngest sister's first birthday. So,
Wow.
yeah, like I'm saying, just with grief, if you know a little bit that it's going to happen, I think it's a little bit different experience than it being so unexpected. So definitely, I remember just being shocked. I remember that someone came to my classroom. I was in 6th grade at the time, and asked me to come down to the office, and something felt off. And I do remember that day just feeling really strange that day, even before it happened, like something was wrong. But I remember us going to the office, and I think there were 4 of us in school at the time. My principal told us, and just the shock of not being able to believe it. I mean, I was old enough to know, okay, he died, but because I was in shock, I said, can you just make sure one more time, that he is actually, passed? Are you sure? So there's definitely the shock. And then I think being one of the older siblings, just a sense of, feeling really bad for my siblings. yeah, I feel like a big part of it being that young was just the shock and like confusion. Like, what do we do now? And like at that time,
Yeah.
yeah, at that time I was pretty introverted. Like I had friends, but there was something about that happening where I felt like, it was a very like public thing. Like people knew about it on the news, and our neighborhood
Mm,
behind us like saw that ambulance coming to get him. And so there was that added sense of like, it was really surreal and strange because like it wasn't just a car accident or an illness, but like the additional, like the suicide that made it confusing because people hadn't really talked to me about suicide. Well, honestly, after people didn't really talk to me about it after either. Like it's really only been as an adult that I've been more aware. And still, it's something that I feel like, who can I share this with? And how do you talk about it?
yeah. When it happened, were you told at that age what it was, like how your father passed away, or did they just say he passed away and didn't really give you an explanation?
No, so honestly, it was like behind our house. So, like, they told us like what had happened.
Yeah. So they told you, the grown-ups in your life at that time told you, but nobody explained it to you really.
Yeah, I
Like,
like they didn't hide that he actually hung himself, and like they didn't hide that from us.
I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
but I think like there
But they didn't explain like suicide, he was struggling with something and
I think
like really explain to you what could cause it.
yeah, I don't even think that they knew at the time what was causing it. So
Okay.
this was 1998, and from what I've experienced with mental illness, like his mom actually had severe bipolar. And again, I didn't know as much as I know. I'm almost 40. I'm 38. I was 11 when it happened.
Right.
I was estranged from his family growing up before he passed. After he passed, I was about 19, 20. I started reaching out to his family. There were some, like my grandpa who was still alive, and his siblings, and some were willing to communicate, some weren't. But like that's when I found out he had been struggling his whole life with severe mental
Yeah.
illness, and a lot of it I I would assume came from his mother's mental illness. She had bipolar. And then my grandfather was a war veteran in World War II, and he rescued a bunch of people. So he was like a war hero. But I think that generation, like you did not talk about mental health. You cover it up.
Right.
There's no problem. Nothing's going on over here, which in my opinion just exacerbates the problem because people aren't getting help. And honestly, I think my aunt and my aunts and uncles and my dad were experiencing verbal emotional abuse because no one was dealing with the issue. I really don't know because I was, not
Right.
around, but
Yeah, you were so young.
yeah,
Yeah. And you were so young at that time.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so you said you have six siblings. You're one of the older
yes.
ones,
So I'm one of six and I'm the second.
the second oldest.
Yes.
Did you feel like you had to take on not a parental role, but like take care of the little ones and kind of protect them from like what was going on, or did you explain to them what was going on? I can imagine they were so
Yeah.
young. I mean, you said your baby sister was
Not even a year.
almost a
Yeah.
year old. Yeah.
So I definitely felt pressure, like kind of protective of my mom, even though I was 11, just
Mm,
Yeah, I think I just remember like it felt like a lot of questions, like a big gaping hole of like what do we do now?
Yeah.
And I don't know that I explained to my siblings, but I definitely, in my opinion, like I I think I did take on a parental role. I mean, I was changing diapers and making food
Mhm.
and helping the younger ones. I know my older sister stayed home more than I did. I was very, so like I was going to say was before my dad died, I was like pretty quiet. And after my dad died, I really, for some reason, like internalized this need to be super extroverted and sort of like
Mhm.
prove that I'm okay and sort of like we're doing fine, just kind of like make it better. Like
Mhm.
I felt this need in a way to kind of like make it seem like things were okay.
Yeah. Do you think now, looking back, that that was just like a coping mechanism for you? We often do things. I know for me, the way I coped with my parents passed away was I dove deep into my faith and tried to learn as much as I could. And that took me on a whole
Hmm.
journey in and of itself. Do you think at that age, because it was such a public thing that your whole neighborhood knew about, it was kind of like putting that face forward of like, nope, we're
Yeah,
fine. Like, don't feel sorry for us.
for sure. Like it was uncomfortable being seen for such a
Mhm.
negative thing. And I really don't think people were,
Yeah.
being rude or saying negative things, but just internalizing. Like as a young person, I do, it was definitely a coping mechanism. Like, what can I do for this?
Yeah.
This is something I can do. I can be super extroverted, super active. And like, that's just how that was just my response.
Yeah. And how do you think that shaped the rest of your childhood and even into your teens? Like, do you feel like you carried that with you as you grew up? Being without a father now, having had having had experienced such traumatic grief at such a young age, how do you feel like that shaped you as you grew older?
Well, I guess I should also say, like, even before he passed,
Hmm.
like, we were one of the poorer families in a pretty wealthy area. And so I felt like we had already, and I don't know how much of this is true and how much of this is me being like an observant, curious person who is sensitive and was just hyper aware. But I feel like we were so scruffy and we were hoarders. Like we kept everything. Um, my mom was very loud, so I feel like on top of dealing with like mental illness and like the trauma of losing my dad, I also had it was pretty dysfunctional at home, including like when you're a hoarder, it's just chaos all the time. Like there's
Yeah.
no order, there's no up or down. So that was confusing. And just my parents and their personalities. You don't want to speak badly about your parents, but
Right.
genuinely, like, because of the so many dimensions of like my dad's mental illness, losing jobs, finding jobs, my mom having many young kids in a short amount of time, like, it was pretty chaotic. And then I
Yeah.
feel like we were neglected emotionally in some ways.
Hmm.
And so that is like, now that I'm
Yeah.
older, I've realized like that's part of like compound grief. Like you have trauma, you have grief, or compound trauma. Is that what it is? Compound.
I don't know the
Yeah, yeah,
correct
yeah, yeah.
technical
But I
term.
think it's like,
I'm learning this from
yeah,
you as we go.
I think that it's compound trauma. So you have a trauma, and then if you have multiple other things happening at the same
Hmm.
time, it's compound. So I had that background which already felt kind of like unsettling. And then even more so unsettling to lose my dad in like a public way through suicide, which you know what I talked about. So I know my personality was perform, you know, do my best, work harder. I'm trying to think of what else you were asking about with being at a young age.
Well, just how that, yeah,
How
well,
it
just how
shaped
you
into
feel
my
like
my
that
teen.
experience
Yes. So I
into your teen
yeah,
years.
I
Yeah.
know that like I said, performing, I got involved in every single extracurricular I could so I wouldn't be at home as much as possible. I pretty much lived at friends' houses, even like age 12, 13, 14 on the weekends. I was almost never home. Again, like definitely coping, but I think too, sincerely looking for like healthy connection. Like I was just craving like real safety and security, and
Yeah.
was finding that in the support of other families. And then honestly, in high school, I think having lost my dad, so I was 12. And then I experienced a few other losses, like a teacher that was actually at my dad's funeral that I was really close with. She was my fourth grade teacher. He passed in sixth grade. She died when I was in seventh or eighth grade. And then the teacher that helped me get through her death passed away a year or two later. So I had a lot of things
Mm,
going on, and no one that was
yeah.
specifically talking about how to grieve. And so I think a lot of my high school time was pretty depressed and just keeping busy to try to stay afloat. And then it wasn't until I went to college that I really was able to be away from my community of origin and kind of start fresh. And
Hmm.
honestly, that's when I broke down and honestly had like I took a year off from school, and I guess I was like 21 when I really was able to stop and start taking a break finally. So like almost
Yeah.
10 years later.
Wow. I'm so sorry that all that happened to you and that you felt like you had to constantly just go, 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 go to get through it. Do you think part of that was because you were kind of not just figuring out your own coping mechanism, but just like trying to run away from it? Like, I have to stay busy, I have to keep my mind busy because I don't want to think about all the things that are going on.
I don't think so for me. I
No.
don't think it was trying to run away. I honestly think it was more, if I do these things, it will help me work through it. And
Mm.
honestly, like some of the things that were the most helpful were definitely being part of teams, like sports teams. I had some really great role models and teach or coaches that really I could tell were like speaking life into me, were really encouraging me and trying to build me up, which I needed and was really healing. And then also, I worked with horses for a while, like probably about 5 years,
Mm.
and working with horses, being alone and cleaning their stalls, or just the using my hands, getting my body and my hands involved. Like that was the most helpful part of being through grief, was getting my body involved, because what I've learned now is just the disassociation that happens.
Mm.
How I, like you were asking about me running away, and I mean, I've learned a lot, like obviously with having mental illness in my family and then experiencing so much anxiety,
Yeah.
depression in my life. I've done a lot of research and reading about psychology. I've also participated in counseling, professional therapy, like a bunch of different therapists throughout my years, and then even life coaching.
Yeah.
And what I'm realizing now is like the somatics part, like your body, how your your brain, like your consciousness, tries to protect you from all the pain by like disassociating. And
Mm,
I even like, there's a lot of memories. I don't have a lot of memories for most of my childhood. And I think it was just my body trying to suppress and survive, like just keep going, just move on. Because it takes so much energy to just, grief can be so heavy. And then when
yes.
you're not getting the support you need, even though I was trying so hard, like I appreciate you. The first time that I spoke with you, you pointed out, like, but Monica, you were so young. And I'm an adult and I've been
Yeah.
trying to heal. And it's like, there's no way as a kid, let alone an adult, I could have understood. Like, it's not
Yeah.
about understanding. And even with
Yeah.
a grief journey, there's still always going to be more to learn. And it's fragmented. It's always fragmented. There's no like, okay, we're here, we've arrived. Like you're always relearning how to grieve, I think.
Hmm.
And as an artist, I was reading an art book and this woman had a quote and in it said like an artist goes in a circle to reclaim the past. And I
Mm,
really like that cyclical, that idea of like a circle, because especially with grieving, like um as a person, I mean, day one of the new year to the last day of that year, you are a different person. And
yeah.
um you have memories and you see those memories differently each year because you're a new person. And in a way, like I really have come to believe like each year and maybe even like each month, each day, like you have to grieve in a different way. It's like you keep the grief never goes away. You have to carry it, find a way to like carry it differently today.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely have said that a lot. For me, grief is definitely not something you get over. It just kind of becomes part of your life, and it weaves itself into every experience that we have, every emotion that we have, whether it's joy, whether it's sadness. I know for me, sometimes I would find myself laughing really hard at something, and then I just get this lump in my throat where I just want to cry because I don't even know at the moment
Yeah.
why, but it's just always mixed in there. And so we do have to learn how to carry it. You're 100% right with that, and I agree. What happened? You said when you left college and you left your home of your neighborhood or your home of origin, and you went away for college. What do you think happened in that time where you finally felt like you were able to just, like you said, you finally felt like you took a year off because you just had to like process and grieve everything? What happened during that time that space was available for you to do that?
I think like we've been talking about how I dealt with grief by like performing or
Mm.
becoming this version I thought I needed to be. And I think a number of things were happening. Like one, like when I moved out of my mom's house, I was 19 and went from I mean, I was very independent from a young age, even before my dad passed. But then after he did, like I've learned a little bit about like in the psychology world about like parentification. Like I need to take care of my mom. Like I'm a kid, but in a way I'm taking care of my mom. And even
Mm.
if I wasn't totally doing it, there was a part of me that in reality leveled up and did things that adults have to do. And so my like childhood was really put on hold. Like I really missed out on the carefreeness of being a kid because I was so consumed with, like I said, like trying to be okay. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of it had to do with wanting, like, developing an identity based around I guess how others saw me, maybe, and then moving into a new environment and being a different age, you know, going from like teenager to like being a full on adult, and being in a city, like, I think I just finally, honestly, like, couldn't carry it anymore. Like, so I did 2 years of college and I worked really hard. I went to an art school called University of the Arts, and it was competitive. I'm really sensitive, and it was competitive. Kids, it was very like ego centered, like I'm the best, like that person's terrible, like
Yeah.
that's what I felt, that's what stuck out to me. And also, like, I was always craving like deep meaningful relationships, and it felt like a bunch of young 19-year-old insecure art kids just kind of like being punks, and you know, them doing their best, but we're also still like young, like so young. You're 19, you're still so young, but you're supposed to be an adult, so
Yeah.
you're figuring it out. And I pushed myself really hard for 2 years to get straight A's and do these conceptual sculptures and impress people. And you know, terrible time management, didn't have good sleeping schedules, and I like my body just couldn't take it anymore. So I think it was honestly like exhaustion more than being in a new
Mm.
city and being out of my home environment. But I do think on a
Yeah.
deeper level, because I wasn't surrounded by what I knew my whole life, there was definitely more space to think and move in a different way that I might not have if I'd stayed home.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. What did you or did you I'm trying to think of the best way to word the question, but do you think that your experiences and like you were talking about these compounded traumas, right? Did that affect in any way the the type of career that you went into, the artwork that you did, going back to what what you studied in school and kind of that direction you took with your career and your education? Do you feel that grief played any part of that? Wanting to express yourself?
Honestly, from a really young age, people had pointed out to me, like, I even remember, seriously, in preschool, like, my mom with all the babies, like, she'd come
Mm.
pick me up from preschool late, and the teacher would always let me try out the new paints. So, I mean, this is like I was 4. And
Mm.
people would always point out, like, wow, like, you're really good at that. And then going into elementary school, I went to a small Catholic school from K-8, and art class, like, was that, and honestly writing, like when we do creative writing, were 2 times where I felt myself, what I know now is like get into the flow. So where I would
Mm.
start and keep going, and I had a vision and a motivation and just a willingness to stay with things when it got hard, but also, like you said, express myself. Like, I really felt free in those times, or safe enough to express myself.
Mm.
And when I was looking into colleges after high school, I prayed about it, and I couldn't think of doing any other career other than be an artist.
Mm.
And it's so interesting. Like, I know for me, so Liz Kohler Brown, she's a surface designer, and she talks about art wounds. And so many people, when I, you know, talk about art, is like, oh, well, how are you going to support yourself? Like, just as soon as you say I'm an artist, oh, like that's problematic, or
Mm.
sort of like not responsible or not practical. And
or like not a real
yes,
job.
exactly. And I honestly, it's so fascinating to me that so many people feel that way, that that's like a socialized norm of like, if you hear a certain set of careers, that that's noble and that's worth pursuing, but certain careers are like not as great or not as one,
Yeah.
you know. And to be honest, like I really didn't have people directing me with a career. Like I did, my parents weren't helping me
Yeah.
figure out what to do. And I did pretty well. I was in
Yeah.
honors tracks in high school, but because of my grief, because of my depression, I wasn't performing as well as, you know, I could have. Um, like I said, I was looking into careers. I was like, I don't want to do anything other than make art. But I also knew for myself, like, I burn out and don't want to be like, have art making my like sole thing. So I thought I'd become an illustrator because that's what I was like, oh, I'll become a children's illustrator. So I went into, you know, 19, I got scholarships to go to University of the Arts and started as a freshman. And they give you these foundations courses, drawing, 2D, which is painting, and 3D. So you doing sculpture or playing around with three-dimensional materials. But I remember in the first few weeks of college going to this, they had us all go to this seminar on like options in art, like what can you do in a career with art. And I don't remember it lasting like longer than an hour. And they had like, I don't know, 50 different things you could become as an artist. And the thing that stuck out to me was art therapy. And so I was on Broad Street in Philadelphia, and Drexel University in Philadelphia is the number one program in the United States for art therapy. I was like, oh, okay. So that to me was like the thing that I could see myself doing, where I wouldn't be art making all the time and burning out. And I envisioned myself, I love talking to people and I love quality time, and words of affirmation are my love languages. And like, I thought, wow, like being one-on-one with people would be really good for me. And then using art as therapy would be a great way to combine a bunch of my strengths. So that was what I was intending. Then, so that led me into art school, this desire to do art. And then you know, sophomore year, decided to minor in art therapy. And at the end of my sophomore year, where I was going into junior and starting my minor, is when I had a mental breakdown. I was sleeping 16 hours a day. I just had no energy. I was severely depressed, going to counseling, and just kind of like, I don't know how I'm going to make it going further. And I think too, I really just realized that the environment in Center City with so much competition was like super unhealthy for me. I had anticipated being at a small, nurturing art school, and instead you had thousands and thousands of artists in these 11-story buildings filled with artists. Just, it was too chaotic for me. And so I prayed and really felt like take a year off. It was really cool because I talked to a college counselor about taking a year off, and she said, well, what do you want to do with a year off? And I said I wanted to work with horses. So she told me that she had a cousin that worked on a dude ranch out west. So I looked into the Dude Ranch Association. I applied and got a job for May. And before that, I actually worked at the art museum in Philadelphia. So I split my year between those two things, which was really cool. The Rocky Steps. Some people don't realize behind the Rocky Steps is an incredible museum, that building behind those Rocky Steps. And it was super boring, but I think it was really good for me. it just really opened my eyes. You know, I needed it. And I had to walk a lot because I was living in West
Mhm.
Philadelphia. I had to walk to the train and then walk from the train half an hour to the art museum and then walk back to the train at night and then walk again to home. So there was a lot of walking, being in my body, surrounded by art, kind of like not knowing what to do, but like it was a safe place. And also, I think
Yeah.
like being on my own, like being with myself for the first time without being surrounded by other people. I mean, I had roommates, but there was a lot of like solitude in that time that I think I really needed. And then
Yeah.
honestly, being hired for that, I was a cowgirl. Like I was taking people on
I love that.
yeah, I mean, I was a stinking cowgirl. It was incredible. Literally 2.5 hours from any town, 25 miles an hour for 2.5 hours down a dirt road. I just lived there in this basin in the middle of the wilderness in national forest land in Montana. The ranch was called Holly Mountain, and honestly, the family that ran it is they're still there. Was so kind and nurturing, and it was still challenging. I mean, being in the middle of nowhere, feeling kind of isolated from friends and family, more so friends, but like just being taken out of, you know, Pennsylvania and moving like 2,000 miles away. Like I'd always had a dream of like traveling because my family never went anywhere. But just the fact I had that
Mhm.
opportunity at that time on a year off was so, that was very formative for me and gave me a lot of self confidence and like being in nature. I mean, I had anxiety the whole time. Just, am I doing things right? And felt totally like an imposter. I wasn't a real cowgirl, but they hired me to be a cowgirl. Like, I grew up writing English, and then there were a lot of, I didn't grow up on a ranch, and the other people kind of did. So, and even people making fun of me for being like a city girl. And it's like, that's cool. I'm not from the city. I'm actually from the suburbs, like
Yeah.
completely different lifestyle. But it was so good for me to, I was 21, taken out of everything I knew, be in the middle of nature and working with horses was really great. And then honestly went back to school, spent another 3 years in school because I transferred and my credits didn't line up. Graduated
Mm.
2011. So I was at the Dude Ranch and took my year off 2008. Went back to school 2009 to 2011 at Rosemont College, right near next to Villanova University. And honestly, I felt like God was just like, I had so much peace about being there. And that was also part of my healing journey was
Mm.
like being outside of the city, not in the city, surrounded by nature. There were only 10 people, thank you, Jesus, for in my art program. I had two
Wow.
teachers, not a bunch of different teachers, 10 different people. It was very intimate. And after taking a year off, after being so just really shocked from it not working out like I anticipated finishing school, I kind of felt like a failure for needing to take a year off and
Mm.
felt like, oh my gosh, like I couldn't even finish more than 2 years. And then once I got there, it was like, oh my gosh, like I I needed a year off. Like I needed to rest. I needed space. And then being at Rosemont was just so like nurturing. And like it gave me what I didn't know I needed, like having surrounded by trees. There was a
Yeah.
creek that went through the back. I was on a volleyball team. But most of all, like I had space and like no one knew me. And I needed that more than anything to just like start fresh and see what happened. And so you were asking, like, how did that shape your decisions in your art? And both at University of the Arts and at Rosemont, I just instinctually started making sculptures based on my experiences with grief. I didn't even know that's what I was doing. And I mean, aside from like a sculpture, a memorial sculpture, well, it wasn't a memorial sculpture, it was kind of a like reliving, like remembering my dad's hanging in like a more beautiful way. I reimagined like him in a different way and made this sculpture. And then I did a mobile with like my family surrounding him, like these shapes, like they didn't look like people. They were these shapes that I made, and they,
Right.
but I did feel safe enough at both schools to explore my grief, even though I knew it was like public. I felt like artists are naturally pretty emotional by nature. And there actually were a lot of other students we didn't even know until we shared what we were doing, who were actually like going through grief as well. And a lot of our sculptures as 19-year-olds ended up being about grief. So that was very cool. And then my senior show, where I had a half of the gallery to create, I was trying to do these sculptures that were saying something or meaning something, and it wasn't working out, wasn't gaining traction. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to do repetitive shapes over and over. And because I wasn't forcing anything, I still ended up expressing my grief through these different materials and different sculptures.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. You I feel like with anything traumatic, right? Like grief or something that's very traumatic in your life, right? That can cause you to grieve, can always take someone down one of two paths. Either you allow it to consume you in a negative way, and then you don't thrive, you just kind of sit in that, or you, even if you don't know you're doing it, you use it in a way that fuels you and helps you take off,
Yes.
if that makes sense.
Yes.
Like,
And
and it's just literally, I'm just sitting here listening to like the trajectory and kind of like the timeline of the things that you've done. And I don't know if you made that connection, but as I'm listening, that you said to the counselor you wanted to work with horses, and she just happened to know someone that like owns a dude ranch. And I just see God's hand in all of those events in your life where he was just gently leading you
yeah.
to where you needed to be, and what he knew what was going to heal you. Do you feel that same connection, or do you think it was something else? You talked about you grew up in a Catholic home and you went to Catholic school.
So honestly, like I know people really range over their experiences with faith, and even in my own life, I started out seeing as like a 4-year-old my dad at church in a suit, lectoring, cantoring. So like in the Catholic Church during the Mass, you have someone open up the service by singing, and my dad would do that, or have someone read the Mass readings. So I remember really clearly a few times seeing him do that, and I really felt like I wanted that. Like I wanted what he had. Like there was something I saw in him that I was like, I know I was very young. And I really believe I was given the gift of faith from a young age. I'm not sure why, but like just a clear perception of like the spirit, like the Holy Spirit in my life, like just talking to someone when I was very young who wasn't there. And then once I went to Catholic school, making the connection of like, God is there, but you can't see him. And it's like, oh, wow, I really think I was talking to God, like as a young child. And I know that,
That's
yeah.
beautiful.
And I know that that's like, I feel, I feel awkward saying that because I just know how faith has been a real struggle for a lot of people. But, and also like, oh, you got this gift, but like I really believe God, like everyone, no exceptions, has different gifts. And I was given the gift of faith from a young age. And I've, throughout my life been like, oh, it's this and oh, it's that, trying to find reasons to connect. And now that I am where I'm at, it's like, it's not so much trying to be like, oh, this was happening then and having that understanding, but more the overall sense of like, belief in
Mm.
and out of season. Because like right now I'm feeling like you were talking about being consumed. I feel like I just finished student teaching to become an elementary teacher, and some of the difficulties I went through, I'm feeling like my depression has taken over, and I'm definitely feeling like consumed, like the
Yeah.
grief of it not being what I expected. And I think too, like real like burnout. And then if you're constantly someone that likes performing and gets dopamine from like completing and finishing and achieving things, when it's over, I've been through this my whole
Mm.
life. Like I just feel depressed when there's that.
Is it like a crash?
Um, I think it's different every time, and I get amnesia that like I actually go through this, you know, a lot. Like I've been through this every time. Like I finished my art gallery show as a senior. And then I remember the next week, like tearing it down and seeing someone else in there. And I felt so betrayed. Like, how dare you? I worked my butt off and I only got it for a week. And now someone else's stuff is in there. And then also just the loss of like,
Yeah.
I literally had emotionally, like when you're a freshman, you go into art school, you're working toward that senior project. So for 4 years, and it was 5 for me because I took a year off and then did an
Hmm.
extra amount of school, it was like, what do I do with myself now? And
Mm.
so that's kind of what I know. Like, so this is a season, it's summer, I'm in the school system, so I'm not working. I'm finishing
Yeah.
up this short, like, summer program that's ending on Tuesday, but just finding a way to make friends with rest and seeing like what does that mean for me? What does that look like? Because I don't think rest is doing nothing. Like I've tried to do nothing and it makes my depression worse. So it's like, how can I rest
Mm.
actively? How can I actively rest? Like I need to get
Mm.
my hands involved. Like how can I do something that's just for me and doesn't need to be like a performance, and believing,
Right.
so much of my life has been achieving. And I think it's twofold. Like I think part of it is like really beautiful and like it's good. Like I love being a hard worker, but on the other hand, it's like I don't need to earn in order to receive like validation or worth. And I've talked about that with my life coaches, and especially the one of them this new year I happened to get out one-on-one with her, and we just went through that like inherent worthiness in the middle of like a pause or a break, like not looking
Hmm.
to external things for your value. And I think that ties in with grief because when you're grieving, especially I think like the first 5 years are like a bullseye. Like the first year you're like in the center, and the second year like you're like pulling further out from like when it happened, like the loss happened, and you're building your
Hmm.
life in a different way. But like the first few years are just especially when it first happens, like your body literally is like suffering. Your body is suffering. Like your body, you don't have energy. And I think something with like death and grief and loss is like, I don't think our brains like to understand or know why. And grief or death, like people, physical, like humans dying is like, it's not understandable. Like it's not something you can actually like grasp. Like we know that people die, but it's confusing.
Hmm.
Like it's not tangible.
Yeah.
Like why are they there 1 minute
And then they're
and then they're
not.
not? Like it's not like I don't think our brains it's beyond
Yeah.
it's beyond what humans can understand. Like even as
Yeah. And it's that,
go ahead.
yeah, because like when you say that, I just think of like, especially right after my parents died, it's that mental expectation of like, oh no, but they're like gonna walk in the room, or like they're gonna, or like still expecting the phone call. Or somehow your mind tricks you into like, well, maybe they're not dead.
Yes.
Maybe they just
Just
went
denial.
somewhere and like they're
Exactly.
coming
And
back.
that's what, as soon as my dad
Yeah.
passed, it was like, I bet they were wrong. Like, I bet like, he didn't really die. Like, they have to check again. Like, it's going to be okay. Like, just the denial for sure. And,
Mm.
and regardless of like how the person dies, like, it's still grief. Like, I think sometimes with loss and trauma, and grief it's like oh well that person had like a worse experience and the thing is like that's not fair to
Yeah.
everyone's individual like you as a human are experiencing a loss. It doesn't matter how relatively different it is. It's just I guess just like honoring the need for grief expression, and I think that's where there's a lot to be done in that area because like on one hand I do know that grief was honored like as a Catholic community, and it's so crazy because I my friend Katie has a nonprofit called Butterfly Baskets. She lost two babies within 2 years,
Mm.
and a way of her dealing with that was creating a nonprofit for bereaved mothers. And she invited me to do an art as therapy session with the bereaved moms who, wanted to do that. So I walked them through pretty much like mark making, just getting in your body, like
Hmm.
really like feeling how it feels to have your hands moving with paint on paper. Like I led them through this thing, but just so okay, so this art our this bereaved mothers retreat day was held right outside of the town that we went to school in, like our grade school. So I
Mm.
actually drove by the old house I grew up in and my Catholic grade school, which is like connected to the church. And I walked by the classrooms. And so my dad died in 1998, and this was like 3 years ago. So, like, about 20 years later, there was a whole garden made in memory of people who'd passed in our community.
Oh
And
wow.
like, I,
That's beautiful. How did that feel? How did that feel going back and passing by your old house and your old school? Because I know like I don't live far from where my parents' house was, where I grew up. And the last time we went there, well, so my husband's parents live in like in that nearish area. So we went there for I think it was Mother's Day for like a barbecue. And so we drove like by my old neighborhood and we didn't pass by my old house. And it just like, I didn't even realize like how emotional it
yeah,
was.
like you didn't
So
anticipate
yeah, it
I would
was
bring
like,
it up.
Oh my gosh. I was just like, well, this sucks.
Yeah.
Like, why am I
Yeah,
crying?
for sure.
It was so difficult. How did that feel? Like, because you saw your old house too.
So it was super layered because one, I was so grateful to be recognized as like I could give value and practice this thing I was super passionate about for the first time. Like this is the first time I ever led like an artist therapy workshop, and I was so excited to be surrounded by women who were grieving because I just knew that like there is an understanding and like a sense of belonging with other people who have
Hmm.
experienced like deep loss. Like, I don't know. Do you remember in the one Harry Potter movie where, did you see the Harry Potter movies or read the books?
I read all the I read all the books.
Okay, so I didn't read the books, but I saw the movies, and in the one, like, is it Luna Lovegood? Like, she and Harry
Uh-huh.
Potter are riding in this coach, and to other people, they're not being pulled by anything. It's just magic, but they can see these
Hmm.
horses. And I
Yeah.
was it Luna that says, like, it's only people who've been through deep grief that can see them. And
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was her.
that really stuck out to me because it's like there's just something so poignant about that scene of like if you haven't experienced the deep loss, it's not like, oh, you don't belong in this group, but if you haven't, but just the sense of like there's something really powerful about
Hmm.
the type of relationship you can have when you've gone through that suffering and like are still showing up every day. And I would imagine it's
Yeah.
similar to people that go to war and bond, over surviving the war together. But there's just something
Yeah.
you don't have to explain that feels very like satisfying and like nurturing, that like you don't need to say anything, you just know that
Yeah.
you are bonded by your shared suffering. And so it
Hmm.
was exhausting to like know all these women experience loss and to have the empathy of like there's a lot of women in this room and they've all lost a baby. And also, like, I know, like, I went to my friend's grandfather's funeral, and the whole time I was just thinking about my dad. And I think the thing with loss is it just like you said, just like you went by that neighborhood, like it brought up that memory and stirred up something you weren't even
Yeah.
thinking about. So I was at this thing, was exhausted, then I saw my school, and then and was like, wow, I made the connection that like I grew up in a community that valued grief, that like honored grief,
Mm.
because there are this memory garden. And then also I totally forgot, but
Mhm.
when I was 8 in second grade, a boy passed away. His name was Evan, from like he had like a shunt in his brain. And I remember
Mm.
I was in second grade, we planted this tree outside the school, and now this tree is full grown. So it was like
Oh, wow.
just this like gift from God of like I couldn't have anticipated that. But then also I was definitely feeling a lot of sorrow over seeing like my family, like the house, one of the houses I grew up in, because it just wasn't like a happy time being there. And like just the like
Mm.
what the lack of like it wasn't nurturing. And so it reminded me of like
Yeah.
what I missed out on. And then I was also in the church where we had my dad's funeral, but I also had first communion and confirmation and saw my friend get married. So it was just this like overwhelming like series of like the highs and lows, and I just went into church and like bawled my brains out. Thank God like no one was there,
Yeah.
and I was trying to avoid the priest because I didn't want to talk to him. I was like, don't look at me. I'm grieving. Don't look at me. But like, just like, I never could have anticipated going to this thing where I was like leading a workshop with other like grieving women. And then on that same day, coming back to like my youngest years where I grew up and making these connections to both like the high highs and the low lows. And
Yeah.
it was honestly like they talk about exposure therapy, like where the thing that you're struggling with, like you are exposed to. And like it was really painful that day. But then I feel like things I wasn't able to express were brought up and I was able to like heal a little bit like the days after. But I also want, but I
Yeah.
also, it also, I think following that weekend, I had a really strange experience. You know, like I said, I was 11. My dad hung himself, like, of being in a, like, we were with our family in central Pennsylvania, and I was alone in the house. And I had this strange experience of feeling like someone was like strangling me. And it's just like the
Mm.
mind, like the body connection of like it was really scary, but I think it was just like my body, like I had to suppress it for so long. Like this story, like I
Yeah.
had to pretend like it didn't happen. And it was like my body was just like, no, like this happened. Like you have to, like, I don't know, just like not just talk about it, but I think come to terms with it, like not
Mm.
not push it down. And I think that's what like it's
Yeah.
what I'm learning about somatics and like the body is like disassociation happens because your brain is trying to protect you of more pain.
Hmm.
And the way our body responds, you know, to fear or anxiety can be really, or grief can be really disorienting because like I've dealt with panic attacks on and off throughout my life, but I
Yeah.
hadn't had one in a while. And then during student teaching, they were so bad that I was like vomiting. And then I just felt like my body was betraying me. Like I couldn't even control my
Hmm.
body, you know? Like I felt so helpless that like
Yeah.
I didn't even have control over my body. But like honestly, now I'm glad that it happened because it's like when you're grieving or you're suffering, like your body doesn't want you to hide or pretend. Like you need to process it and your body finds a way of dealing with it if you're not willing to.
Yeah. Is that what you are teaching as a student teacher now? Are you doing art therapy? Are you in that world?
No, actually, I got certified to be an elementary teacher because we're in a pretty like rural part of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So like finishing my story about like wanting to be an art therapist, like I had looked into getting certified and with living in rural America, like it just doesn't make sense. Like, so my husband and I agreed because he's a teacher, I would get certified. And honestly, I
Hmm.
substitute teaching for 4 years, and I realized like I really love being with the little kids. They're so messy, they're so chaotic, and it's actually like really freeing because I'm so worried
Yeah.
about messing up and getting things right, and they're just like doing their best, and it's allowed, you know? So I think it's honestly healing for me, and I think that I don't know, it's like a good crazy. And it's like
Yeah.
secure income, whatever that means, but like it's a secure job, like it's some kind of job security because And,
Yeah.
like what is really secure? Like you really don't know. Like anything can happen, but I think it is
Yeah.
good because it can take the pressure off of me having to have a thriving art business.
Yeah.
I know going forward, like it's been on my heart, like to definitely talk more openly, like intentionally about grief and invite other
Yeah.
people who are grieving to be part of like grief conversations. I'm not sure what that looks like, but
Yeah.
I've been definitely like journaling and writing poetry and speaking with other friends who are artists about my like highs and lows and especially friends who have experienced loss, and that is like fueling because it just affirms more of what I already know, that like people need better direction with like how to process grief and just
Yeah.
actually talk about it.
Yeah. I'm big on just the actually talking about it because you really don't. I feel like people around me, just in everyday, like you said, if they haven't experienced grief, it's almost like you can't bring it up, right? They don't want to talk about it. It makes them uncomfortable. And there is that unspoken understanding between people who have experienced it because you know the same weight that you're feeling on your chest every day is the same one that I feel. And so it's like that unspoken understanding, like, I get what you're going through, and I know that you get what I'm going through. And it's like you said earlier, we don't even have to say it. It's just, we get it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like how this podcast got started because I just wanted to have conversations with people who are experiencing grief, and we all experience it differently.
For sure.
And it all and everyone's experience, I'm seeing it motivates something different in each person, which has been so lovely to see the beauty that's coming out of it
Yes, for sure.
because it's not ugly and it's not taboo. You know, beautiful things can grow out of the grief, and that's kind of what I want to share here on this platform. So you are always welcome to come back and we can have more conversations. If anyone wants to connect with you or see your work, or
Sure.
do you have a website, social media, all that stuff?
Yeah, I have an Instagram. I haven't been as active on it, but I started a Substack to talk about grief. And I kind of like got confused about how to keep it going, like, but I also had started the student teaching. So I guess I would love to, you can connect through Instagram, or I can give you like my email if people are interested in having conversations. Like after I did that workshop with the bereaved moms, a few people reached out to me, and one I continued talking with, and that was just really helpful for me and meaningful to connect with someone that was brave enough to say, like, I'm really hurting, like, can we talk about it? And honestly, I I really feel like this is a big part of my like life purpose, is nurturing and making space for conversations around grief so that people can live with it, like with integrity, and move through it, not like you said, and not be consumed.
Yeah, definitely send me all your information because I create show notes for this,
Yes,
and I will put all your information in there so people can find you and reach out to
that
you.
sounds great.
Thank you so much for sitting with me and having this conversation. I would love to have you on again. We can touch on another topic.
That would be amazing. Yeah.
And I love your Substack thing. Definitely share the link with that because I wanna look and see what that is too. I actually, an idea popped into my head for you, and we'll talk about it off camera. But thank you, Monica, for spending some time with me. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It is so, it just really touched my heart to see the journey that you've been on and what you've been able to create that's so beautiful out of something that was so painful for you. So thank you for sharing that with me and with everyone else who's listening. Do you have any last thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience?
I think just being patient and present with yourself when it's the hardest. I think naturally, like, I was thinking about this the other day, like Adam and Eve, like what was the first thing that they did when in the garden, like they hid, and we want to hide our pain. And the keynote speaker at the retreat that I was at talked about that healing happens in community. And so I think that really ties in what you're saying with making space for the conversation, because there's a part of us that thinks like, oh, we can just deal with it on our own. But there's so much evidence in my life, and I think around, like, just humans need each other in order to have like someone witness to their grief. And sometimes it's that witness that allows for like the next step of healing. So like being willing to be vulnerable and take a chance, even if you've been let down before, because like, what if this is the thing that helps you to heal?
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think that's a perfect place to end this conversation, to be patient and don't hide, because these conversations need to be had. Right. Thank you guys for listening. You can find all of Monica's information in the show notes of this episode. And as always, just remember, where Jesus leads the way, we are called to follow. Thank you, Monica.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on a Catholic journey. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It helps others find the podcast and be part of this journey. Until next time, remember, where Jesus leads the way, we are called to follow.